Hey YouTube, in this video I'm going to be talking about how to improve your block starts. So a lot of people have problems with their block starts, which obviously results in a lot of people spending a lot of time on their block starts. However, this time can actually be shortened by being more focused in their intention on improving their blocks. Specifically, know your problems and know what to do to fix your problems. And that's what I'm going to be talking about more in this video. The blocks shouldn't make you stumble. The reason why blocks were invented was because, like, probably about 50 years ago, before we had blocks, the athletes used to dig into the ground and make holes so they could be stable as they pushed off out of the blocks. Because if you ever tried to sprint without any holes or using blocks, you'd notice that the chance of you stumbling, or not so much stumbling but tripping, goes up dramatically, because maybe you're on grass, maybe you're on concrete, maybe it doesn't matter, maybe even on a track, but it's slippery. It's really slippery. And I know from experience that I've slipped on a track, specifically in shoes. I've slipped on a track in socks, and I've slipped on a track in bare feet. And the only time I don't slip on a track is in spikes, and even then I can still potentially slip on a track if it's wet enough. But the blocks, they're there to ensure that you're able to get that first step and push off with extreme power, as much power as you can produce without tripping. So essentially, the blocks should just feel like you walking, just like walking down the street. For example, the intensity shouldn't really be changing if you're going to walk down the street. It should feel just as intense as before. There shouldn't be any difficulties getting up to your walking speed or slowing down the same way it should be whilst you're sprinting. The only thing is there would be slight difficulties of actually building up to speed here, but the problem here shouldn't start from the very first step. It should happen much later on, when you're actually trying to get out of the dry phase and push. So how do we make sure that we're able to have more efficient starts without stumbling? Well, we use drills. To make sure you don't stumble out of the blocks, you need to understand how to push out of the blocks. And the way you push out of the blocks is with both feet. You don't just use one, you use both. You might think, but I've always been told to just use one foot. I'm not supposed to use both, and you are. What you're not supposed to do is you're not supposed to jump out of the blocks. Because if you jump out of the blocks, it's like, say that this hand is both of my feet, and this is the blocks. What's going to happen is this, and then one foot is going to extend. You don't want that. What you want is, you want both feet to push into the blocks, and then the back foot is supposed to just do a slight push and go forwards, whilst the front foot continues to push, and then your feet just separate just like that. And then from there, it's literally just unilateral movements up until the finish line. The blocks is the only time we're using both sides of your body at the same time to push, to generate more force. And the way to make sure you're able to pull this off is with wall accelerations. You just lean against the wall, and you just slightly get into a bent position. So you're against the wall, you just lean forwards, hit the wall, you have your feet right next to each other, and then you slightly separate them, you bend your knees, and then you just practice pushing with both feet, push down into the ground. Then the back leg, you relax it and you drive it up. You push with the glutes and you drive up with the hips. And then the front leg, you continue to push that with your glutes, so that straightens out. And then you just switch, you practice doing that. Then you just go back to the unilateral movement. If you want to practice getting better at coming out of the blocks without stumbling, this is probably the most important one. Because if you push it with just one leg, if you're not providing enough force, it's easy to stumble. And if for some reason your foot moves as you're coming out the blocks, again, it's easy to stumble. But that's just the first step. Once you've got that done, then you need to worry about the other steps. Because maybe you come out of the blocks fine with one step, but in reality your body isn't actually believing you're coming out fine. So what ends up happening is you drive out forwards, but then one foot lands off to the side and you start going like this, because you generated too much force with one leg and you wasn't able to counterbalance it with both arms. But if you used the other leg, you might have been able to counterbalance that slightly, so your arms will be able to make sure you're staying straight, because that's just going to disperse some of your force. I'm not saying you're going to stumble by doing that, but there's a good chance a lot of your force is going to get dissipated. And coming out of the blocks and getting up to speed takes a lot of energy, especially if it's done incorrectly. And you don't want this energy to be wasted just because you can waste it. It's be much better to be using this energy whilst you're at top speed to try and hold it, or see if you can push beyond and hit another gear to continue to accelerate. Once you've got that done, the next thing you want to focus on is, you might notice that when in the blocks, your arms might slightly, just your elbows, they might slightly go down and then go up. So there's a couple different variances to this. Maybe your elbows just slightly push out, or maybe you push down into the ground with your hands and then you just lift up your entire body and then you push with your legs. No matter what happens, generally there isn't a solution to this problem. If you have this problem, there's no specific way to fix it other than just doing more block starts, because the reason that's happening is for two reasons. First of all, your body isn't used to how you're pushing out the blocks, so it needs to adapt to understand when to move certain parts of its body, when certain parts of your body, and when not to. And the second reason is really just you probably just haven't spent a lot of time in the blocks, so you're probably still experimenting, or there's a good chance that you've changed your technique too quickly for your body to adapt. So maybe you had a decent enough block start before. It wasn't perfect, but it was decent enough, but then your technique changed drastically by the next few times you got into the blocks, and you didn't do enough block starts for your body to understand, just keep my arms stable and move my legs first. So again, you just need to go back to spending more time doing block starts so your body can adapt, because eventually that will just get removed after a while. That generally just gets removed, as long as you remember to try and keep your arms straight, which is a great way to do that is when you have your arms in the blocks, you want to kind of rotate your entire arm so it's locked out, because when that happens, it's literally impossible for your arm to bend unless you slightly twist it and then it bends, and by that point you're already going to be pushing off, your hands are going to be off the ground, and from that point your body's automatically just going to go switch. So when that happens, your body already knows just to go and start moving, so you won't have to have that problem anymore. The next problem you might have when you're coming out of the blocks is the switching itself. Maybe you don't switch properly. And to switch properly, when your back arm to come up as high as possible, and your front arm to be around here in your face, about here, anywhere about here or here. Doesn't matter whether it's this way or that way, but you want your arms to be about here, and you want it to come down really quickly. The way to get that done, to make sure that this happens, is really simple, to be honest. Again, you don't even need to be in the blocks. You don't even need to be at training. You can do this at home. It's literally just relax, look down, and then quickly practice switching, like properly driving. I have a bed beside me, so I can't properly do it, and I don't really have much space, but just practice switching just like that, and after a while you just start to get better and better and better. The next potential problem you might have when you're coming out of the blocks now is that you're spending too much airtime in the air. The way to fix that is, first of all, realize when the stretch shortening cycle is occurring in your legs, so you know when it's time to push back down, because you might think you can just continue to push, but this is just wasting time. Yeah, you're going to be getting further and further and further away from the blocks, which is good because you're going to be landing further from the line. But if everyone already is about to start their second step, this is pointless. There's no point. You just want to go up and down, up and down. If you want to be able to push out the block harder, then this is where you need to spend more time in the gym, not trying to overreach, because if you overreach, that increases your chances of stumbling. Because I know from experience, I've come out the blocks good, and then I've stumbled at my fourth or fifth step because I was overreaching. There was no point or need for me to overreach. I should have just come down as quickly as possible and start to switch and switch and switch. So first of all, to fix that would be the stretch shortening cycle. Understand how that feels in your hips and your glutes whilst you're coming out of the blocks in this new angle, because normally when you're sprinting you go upright, so you don't have this problem as much. And then make sure that when you're moving your arms, you make sure that there's no lag. You want it to go, the second your arm comes up to its highest, you bring it back down. You don't want to waste any time just holding up like that and then bringing it back down. A good example of a good switch, and not so much a bad switch, but a suboptimal switch, would be to look at Christian Coleman and Noah Lyles when they came out the 60 meter. It's everywhere on Instagram right now. It should still be on Instagram right now. If you look at both, you'll see that the second Christian Coleman gets his front arm up, it comes straight down. Whilst Christian Coleman's bringing his arm down, Noah Lyles is still up. He's still holding that arm up, and then he comes down. And if you look at their feet, their toes specifically straight after that, you see that Christian Coleman gets his foot down on the line first, and then Noah Lyles is second. And and because of this, literally just one tiny detail, Christian Coleman wins the race. Obviously, there was probably other various factors that influenced it, but Christian Coleman has lost to Noah Lyles before in a 100 meter, and whilst this is a 60, not 100 meter, Noah Lyles is improved by enough to just lose to Christian Coleman by, no, it wasn't even one step, about half a step. So if Noah Lyles was able to push down faster and be on time with Christian Coleman with his higher top end speed, there's a good chance that he could have beat Christian Coleman in that 60, and then he would have beat Trayvon, and then he would have beat Christian Coleman. And then you could have been talking as much as you wanted to, and no one could really say too much. It just keep saying humble him, humble him, humble him. But because this slight problem that he had, he wasn't able to push off as fast as he could have whilst using what he had, and this cost him the race for a good chance. So make sure that when you're doing this, you make sure you actually do this properly. Don't linger. The second you bring your arm up to full extension, you bring it back down. Don't waste any time, because the more your body gets used to it, the more it's going to do this as well when you're in the blocks, and your legs will also follow after a while. And it should just, for me anyway, it was kind of just, it just happened. Like I really just woke up one day and my body was just like, yeah, up, down, up, down, up, down for both my legs and my arms. That might happen for you or it might not. But regardless of what the case is, making sure that you actually make sure you follow the stretch shortening cycle on your arms and your legs to be able to switch as fast as possible is extremely important. And then the next thing to improve your block starts is to understand that you want to project out of the blocks, not so much step out of the blocks. You want to make sure that you're using your full stride length. Your stride frequency is fast but not too fast, because if it's too fast, you're just going to be doing tiny baby steps instead of fully extending. Because if it takes you 0.5 seconds to completely stretch out your legs, but you're stepping down in 0.3 seconds, then you should have just waited 0.2 seconds, because then you would have got that full reach. And maybe you could have covered 1 meter when instead you covered 80 centimeters. And this after a while would add up, like it did for Noah Lyles when he was racing Christian Coleman. Though for him, it wasn't so much that he wasn't completely striding out, but he was overstriding, and essentially he had airtime which he didn't need to have. So making sure you focus on projection and you get full stride length, and you keep the stride rate at a reasonable amount. You slowly increase that with the stride length, of course, because you're not going to reach maximal stride length whilst you're sprinting. Is extremely important if you actually want to get faster. If you like my video, like the video, let me know in the comments section below. Check the description, because anything I forget to say in the video I always put in the description. And if you like my content, subscribe, helps the channel out a lot. I post every 2 days at 1 p.m. Greenwich Mean Time. If you don't know when that is, just hit the bell and then you'll be notified instantly.